Welcome back to our dearly departed season so fars. And I don't know why we would be surprised, but it's obviously been eventful at Watford. Welcome along, Pete from YouOrns TV. This is just a day in the life, really, for a Watford fan, this start so far, right?
It's been a fortnight. We hadn't sacked anyone. It was well overdue, clearly. Yeah, no, it probably isn't as surprising to the people who follow the club because Xisco was enormously popular. Wonderful guy, came in and took over midway through last season. A lot of people will have watched this. We had a guy called Ivic in charge who was busy doing a Dracula impression most of the time. And whilst we were successful, he absolutely sucked the life out of the club. And Xisco was the antidote to that. He just came in. He was wonderful. He was funny. He smiled. He played Sweet Caroline at every opportunity. And he just brought in this really good feel-good factor. And we had good enough players to be able to just go and attack the championship without, kind of being so overly defensive. So it worked really well through. The thing we didn't see, we saw all the stuff he did in terms of making the players happy and creating this great environment. What we didn't see was any tactical nous or knowledge, and he didn't have any experience. He'd only coached for 11 games or so in the Georgian Premier League. He'd been kind of a pseudo assistant manager for a season before, so he wasn't entirely new to the game. But we didn't see anything that would allow him to, kind of make a change in the game that would really make a beneficial kind of scoreline for us, especially over the last 7 Premiership games. So and it's Watford, so we changed seats again.
Do you get frustrated when you hear from the outside, not necessarily even ignorant views, views from people who you think maybe should have done a little bit more digging, who maybe just look at the league table and that's the beginning and end of their assessment and judge this as crazy Watford without knowing perhaps some of the points you just made?
There will be people who will do, because you can't look back since the Pozzos have been there and not go, crikey, that's quite a lot of managers. Losing 1 seemed, unfortunate, and 2 seems careless, and 13 seems downright outrageous. But of all of those, yes, some of them left, some of them didn't have contracts renewed. I know it's a subtle difference between giving somebody the boot and not renewing their contract. But I don't think we get annoyed at other fans coming in on forums or what have you, because we do exactly the same to them. That's part of the game. Where you do get annoyed is with the pundits who, and I'm sure you see this as well, and I'm sure people from all the clubs get annoyed at I wouldn't want to name names, but Danny Murphy and Michael Owen immediately spring to mind.
Yeah, right.
Who just feel that because they played the game, they can say whatever they want and presume that there's some level of intellect behind it, when there clearly isn't. So yeah, we'd like to see the pundits and some of the journos as well. Martin Samuel could up his game, certainly.
So would you go along with the narrative, perhaps, that the 2 victories so far, maybe the first half against Villa was a bit of an outlier, and you got a Norwich side with just completely crushed confidence, and perhaps this 1 point per game, which would probably keep you up, isn't viable?
No, the results in terms of the points on the board after 7 games, everybody goes, no, we get that. And the management of the club have made a real point of coming out and saying, no, it's the performance trend. And everybody who's watched them can see it. Everybody gets highly delighted. We went to Norwich and the difference in performance was absolutely marked. But there had been no established pattern of play, game formation that we saw. We started off really well against Aston Villa, and poor old Matt Targett is probably still trying to untwist himself from the many different ways that Ismail Assar ran him that day. But we got a goal early on, we got a second, we then got a wonderful third, and then what poor old Xisco doesn't know how to do is close the game out. Villa came back into it with a great goal, and then it came down to a late penalty, but you could see there were issues there. The other games, we had our well, our cards, shall we say, proverbially handed to us by Brighton, who Potter did a great job on us in terms of the shape and the formation, no in-game management to correct that. Tottenham were fairly fortunate, but they persistently worked in the areas to get a free kick, and Son put one of those horrible ones in that goes to the far post. And then we played Wolves, and they did exactly the same thing as we had done last week by Leeds, which is press us high up, and our guys at the back collapse, and the midfield really doesn't kind of do too much. So, we need somebody in who's going to solidify us more and make us a little bit more streetwise, because we look like the young kids who've come up, and occasionally we'll get a result, but most of the time, maybe not.
We talked about an inexperienced manager. If I were to say to you, Sampdoria, Roma, Fulham, Nantes, Leicester, Greece, Monaco, Inter, Roma, Juve, Parma, Valencia, Chelsea, Atletico, Valencia, Fiorentina, Napoli, Cagliari, you'd probably know who I was talking about. So,
and that was in reverse order, and I know it as well. Yeah,
yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, it was funny because, well, obviously, the Watford forums have been a buzz, as you'd imagine, and I put on there that, Ranieri makes sense. He makes sense because from a cultural point of view, the Pozzos know him. They've known him for that 35 years in Italy, because he came in and around 86. Well, the Pozzos have owned Udinese since 84. So, I mean, their careers as coaches and owners have absolutely run in parallel. They just never happened to have worked together. He's had some fabulous times, as we know, at some of those clubs where, for example, yes, Chelsea, but also at Atletico and others, where he was the one who went in before, set a really good foundation, and then the next person came in and really kind of ran it home. Almost the inverse of what happened with dear old Nigel Pearson, setting it up for Ranieri that time. Right. It's the one and only time it's happened for him, really. But he's had, I was talking to somebody on the forum and saying, well, look, with all of this, it makes an awful lot of sense. And somebody just came back and went, yeah, but he took Fulham down. You go, yeah. Graham Taylor took Watford down. Doesn't mean he wasn't magnificent for us, And as you've said, all of those, I just responded and said he managed 17 games for Fulham. A good friend of mine at work is a Fulham fan. And he went, I'm not sure. But that's 17 games out of over 1,320 or something ridiculous, and plus 4 for Greece, which was awful as well. So fair play. But he's got enough good stuff on his resume to for us to be able to think, look, he knows how to bring a solidity to it. We've got an awful lot of pace that we haven't really been a counter-attacking team. And the one thing he got out of Vardy was, right, we're going to play to your strengths. And that's one of the things that we absolutely need to do. We've got some, for the first time in an awful long time, we've got some real genuine pace across the front line rather than just Ishmael. And we kind of need to work to that, and we need to be solid at the back and organised. And that's I hope what he'll bring us.
Yeah, well said, because I think football fans are very good at picking the extreme, aren't they? And it would be equally wrong to judge Ranieri on Fulham in the same way. In the same way, it's wrong to judge him on Leicester, which is the greatest kind of Premier League win that there'll ever be. It's judging him on the longevity and the experience, which I think is the right thing to do, isn't it?
Well, talking of pundits who don't know what they're talking about, Simon Jordan came out and said, "Oh, he gets too much credit for Leicester." He might do, but look at the whole length of his career. And the one thing that can be thrown at Xisco is that he didn't have experience. He didn't know what to do, because experience is what you get immediately after you needed it in the first place. So wherever he ends up going, he will be great. Genuinely, he will be greatly bettered for having come to Watford. It's raised his profile. He's got a promotion on his, in a senior league. No disrespect to the Georgian league, which he'd also won, but his the knowledge of everybody for him has got much better. So he's going to go on and do something with that experience. But what we need is somebody who's got that experience and can deliver something ideally now, rather than somebody who's going to learn on the job. And it's also a very un-Pozzo-like thing to have actually allowed him to stay on in this post. And I don't think the Pozzos get the credit for this, is the fact that if you look at it on paper, bearing in mind we kind of let Jokanovic go, and there was contract, is he gonna sign, and did he want too much money, blah 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 blah. They decided that what got us here isn't necessarily going to keep us here. and therefore they made a change at that particular point. They saw enough in Xisco to keep him on and give him a chance. Unfortunately, it hasn't really worked out. People will point to the league table and say, well, yeah, it does. Our next 8 games,
yes, I've seen them.
He would be in
ranks.
But Norwich have gone through that, and now they need to go. They need to do our season in reverse, and us likewise. So, I mean, the Potsos can't be accused of not giving it a go. And at a club like Watford, that's all we can realistically ask: is go for it as best we can.
You've already mentioned Ismaila Sarr, who was sort of the too good for the Championship type player last season. Him aside, perhaps, who have you enjoyed most sort of watching in the Watford 11 this season?
I think we've only in the last 3 to 4 games have we seen Danny Rose get to anything like full fitness, and he has been an absolute joy. Joy not necessarily being a word everybody associates with Danny Rose, but having somebody at left back whose sheer nous and game know-how and bloody mindedness is wonderful, because we've got competition in places, and he's replaced Adam Messina, who's extremely popular and a great player to have in the squad. But to have somebody who wasn't going to fold like a pack of cards was very useful. I think we need to see others continue what we've seen from Danny. We need that to permeate out, that kind of determination and game savvy to really come through all the way through.
So you got 2 wins to fall back on for this answer. What's been the, and you can choose maybe a half of one game. What's been the high watermark for performance this season then in the opening 7 for Watford?
Yeah, I mean, you could choose the first half against Villa, or you could choose basically the first and the last 20 against Norwich. The thing that we've been lacking in the games leading up to Norwich was we've got 2 excellent, for a club the size of Watford, we've got Kiko Femenia, who's an absolute rampaging right back. He's more of a right winger, in all honesty, who kind of starts to believe it. And then we've got Ngakia, who was the young lad we took from West Ham at the start of last year, who's more of a traditional right back. He's more of a solid defender. But the one thing we needed at the time before the Norwich game was it was where the goals kind of come from. We scored 3 against Villa, and then we struck out 3 times. And so we really needed to see something that was going to do something to kind of scare people, because it's very easy to double up on Sarr if you haven't got somebody overlapping or an alternate place to take it.
On the other wing, exactly.
And Kiko came into the side with a bravado and went buccaneering down the right-hand side. And the Norwich left back, which is Brandon Williams from Man United, who's again a young, inexperienced fullback's probably got a great future, but again he was like, which way am I going? What do I do? And they pulled them apart, which was superb. Also, that game, I think, well, both of those games, Emmanuel Dennis on the opposite flank. He can play through the middle, and he probably will do now that Josh King's got a bit of a knock. But he on the left-hand side, we need to see more of him. He needs to come through and really impose himself on games a little bit more. As in fairness to Sarr, because he can blow hot and cold in games. There'll be,
The thing with Sarr, though, Pete, is he only has to blow hot for 5 minutes and he wins the game by himself, doesn't he?
He does. He's absolutely right. But Wolves fans, Tottenham fans, and Brighton fans will go, really? What? Didn't see that much. No, that's unfair on him. He did create a bit of problems against Tottenham. The one thing we need to do with him is put the ball in behind, because he's got absolutely electric pace. When he first came and joined the club, and he was playing I think it was against Coventry in the League Cup, the ball came out to him, and he joined us, and he looked like this kind of young 19-year-old or 18-year-old. He was a bit older than that, but that's how he looked. And he took a touch, and you went, well, that's gone. What a dreadful first touch. And then, oh, Christ. And he just went and just left everybody behind. If we can work to, rather than play the ball into feet and then he has to try to beat somebody and do something, to play the ball into space, get him running on, and we will terrify teams if they actually push on us.
I think you've probably just answered my next question. I was going to ask, who would you like to sort of see more, without digging somebody out, who would you like to see more from? And did you say Josh King's now got an injury?
Josh King picked up an injury against Leeds.
So maybe it's not fair to say him, but who would
No,
you?
no. I think a lot of people. He jumped into the team. His first game was against Brighton, which was the second game in, but he only came on for 25 minutes, and they've been kind of elongating his number of minutes to come out. And a lot of people have been saying, "Oh, he really needs a goal. He really needs a goal." Whereas actually, he's been doing a fine centre forward position. You know, anybody playing with a front three knows that centre forward has to play an awful lot of time with his back to goal and pick up the bits and pieces. Against Leeds, he didn't have the greatest of games. Nobody did. It was an absolutely shocking performance all around, and a good performance by Leeds in order to give him credit. But so we'd like to see more from him. But I think Dennis on that far side, he's got so much potential. When he plays, he can be absolutely unplayable. And that first 20 minutes against Villa, when he was playing in the middle and he had Sarr alongside him, you saw that sort of a real kind of synchronicity between the two, and a real formation of a partnership. And one of the criticisms of Josh King moving into the centre was that it split those two away from each other. So you know, we need to see that, and we need to see a bit more from Ranieri. He hasn't done enough yet. He's only been here a day, and he hasn't yet been sacked. So what can he do?
And one of my favourite Police albums there, Synchronicity as well, from the mid-'80s. Very good.
I'm a Regatta de Blanc man, so there you go.
Oh, there you go. From the proper reggae stuff.
Oh, yeah, the original stuff, yeah.
I've been asking everybody today, if we speak at Christmas, will you be higher or lower? Now, obviously, there's two very big caveats with this. One is that...
We're talking in the league, yeah?
Yeah. One is that Watford currently 15th, which probably every single Watford fan and staff member would take. And the other thing you mentioned is just an absolutely horrible run of games coming up. So you can answer that question however you choose, Pete. Higher or lower by Christmas?
I think because of the run, we will most likely be lower than we are now. In all of the kind of pre-season stuff, you know, and the predictions, where are you going to be? I think everybody would bite 17th, you know, bite that off now if we can. We know what this is. We are in no doubt that this is a very new team. I mean, if you look at the front six, if you will, of a 4-3-3, only one of them was here last year. So there's a lot of gelling to do. There's a lot of bringing it together. And therefore, if they stay up this year, that is tremendous success. And it means the Pozzo's gambles, you know, have paid off and their decisions have paid off. So I'll take that. But I would presume that by Christmas, if we're at 15th, my God, what a good Christmas I'll be having.
Yeah, that'd be a fine. You've probably beaten one of the big boys if that's the case. Then along the way,
we've done it each year. We've beaten one or given a couple of decent games, but as long as it's not Man City, because they spank us, and we're lucky if it doesn't get into, like, you know, Roman numerals on the teleprinter. It's ridiculous.
You and everybody else. Yeah. Can you give me an old school grade then for the start to the season so far? I need a letter grade.
I'm going to say C. I'm going to say C because it's neither up nor down. And obviously because of, you know, you look at it and think, what did Cisco have to do to get beyond that? You know, you could just turn around and say another win, a result on Saturday, because then he would have been 3 games unbeaten. Would they have made the chop then? The Pozzos tend to have players managers lined up that they'll go to. So I would say C, but now it's, you know, it's the new pupil time. He's got to come in and do it with what he's got.
Brilliant stuff, Pete. Always interesting Watford, isn't it? Never straightforward, but always fun to talk about.
Well, I mean, the thing is, and a lot of stuff is, you know, like anything, you go to an away game and you talk to fans, and they'll talk about what it is. And obviously, you know, I can see your Ipswich scarf on the door there. You know, we have to explain to people all the time that we're Watford. You know, Watford, we had 6 years in the top flight in the 80s. And until the Pozzos came along and did this model that the media has not stopped carping about the entire time, we had never done that. Well, we had 5 years and we had an FA Cup final, which is exactly what we did. Yes, we got stuffed 6-0 on Man City. We won't talk about that. But we were there. And that was amazing for us. And now we're back in again. It's really something. So there's, you know, people carp about the model, but there's something in it, because a club like ours, we didn't know if we could kind of see those days again. And if I offered Ipswich the opportunity to repeat the mid-70s through to the mid-80s
well,
again,
and
what a team, by the way.
your manager goes off and does England as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of, you know, would you take it if there were some idiosyncrasies about it? And the answer, most people go, yeah, absolutely, I would.
You reckon we've had one good season in 15, but anyway, this is not about Ipswich. This is about Watford. And where can we find your work on YouTube? And where can we find you on Twitter, Pete?
Well, I'm standing in for the guys from Do Not Scratch Your Eyes podcast because they're both holidaying themselves. But I'm officially their cartoonist, which is one of the things you'll see on YouOrns TV. Yeah. So nice. YouOrns TV, it's basically a YouTube channel created because it might be interesting to see if there's other clubs like this. There's a kind of a split between young and slightly older people, especially when you've got a generation who harks on about the 80s, like, you know, oh, what, you're going to tell me about Luther Blissett again? Oh, great. You know, so I started to try to put old content, context around matches and stuff, and video profiles, and lots of cartoons, including Elton John mocking those up the road at Luton Town, which is how I came together with the guys from Do Not Scratch Your Eyes as well. So they'll be watching this, no doubt, reclining in sunnier climes.
Oh, more power to them. Right, Pete, thank you very much for your time, and yeah, good luck with that run of games coming up, buddy.